So again, for those of you that joined us in the last minute, I'm Ruby Garg with the IIS Secretariat. I support our work on operational resilience. I'm joined today by the ORWG Chair, Mr. Andre Bertrand, as well as members of our Operational Resilience Working Group, who are all very much involved in the drafting of our operational resilience objectives. So that is Matthew Hempton, Max Turnvatsky, and George Alayan. Today, the objective of this session is to provide an overview of our draft application paper on operational resilience objectives. So we'll be giving you a bit of background as well as going over the content and a preview of what we are doing next. We remind everyone that this session is recorded and the recording will be available on our website following this session. Just a few housekeeping issues. So to improve audio quality, we ask everyone to please keep their microphones on mute. There'll be ample time for questions following the prepared presentation. And if you would like to ask a question, you will be able to unmute as well as pose questions through the chat. If there's a red microphone beside your name, that indicates that you're muted. And if there's not a red microphone, then you're unmuted. So with that, I will turn it over to the chair of the Operational Resilience Working Group, Mr. Andre Bertrand.
Thank you very much, Ruby, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone from my side. My name is Andre Bertrand. I am the acting chair of the group, of the Operational Resilience Working Group, or WG, of the IIS, and I'm also working for EIOPA, where I am leading the implementation of the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is the regulation in the European Union to address IT risk and cyber resilience in the financial sector. The objective, yes, of my introduction today is to give you a little bit of background of why we have developed an application paper on operational resilience, and also to give you a bit on outlook on the way forward. Then my colleagues, Matthew, Max, and George, who have been working together with the Operational Resilience Working Group in the past months, will give you an overview of the paper we have developed. First, we have developed an application paper. What is an application paper? For those of you who are not familiar with the jargon of the IIS, an application paper is a tool which we developed to explain the insurance core principle, which are the overall standards developed by the IIS to ensure supervisory convergence or minimum harmonization in the context of insurance supervision at global level. The objective of an application paper is to basically explain how the insurance core principle have to be interpreted or understood in the context of a specific topic. In this case, the operational resilience. The history of this application paper started in 2022, where the Operational Resilience Task Force back there have developed a paper around the operational resilience in the insurance sector and asked stakeholder feedback on this work. And on the basis of the stakeholder feedback, we understood that there is the need to provide a bit of clarity and understanding on how to apply on how to supervise operational resilience in a more harmonized way at global level. In consideration, basically, of this feedback, we have decided to develop this paper, which will be which set high-level principle, high-level objectives for insurance supervisor and supervised entities, which will be then complemented by a toolkit, which will provide, let's say, will cascade in a more operational way those principles into a more supervisory tool or supervisory objectives. The idea, as mentioned, is to establish a sound and consistent foundation to create a minimum standard, minimum understanding to support authorities in supervising the operational resilience. Yeah, so having said that, maybe just an overview of the paper. So next slide, please. We have developed the paper basically following three key sections. Looking at this picture, the first section in the top left corner, operational resilience governance or operational risk management, which basically provides an high-level overview on the key principle, the key objective for insurers on how to anchor operational resilience in the existing governance framework. Second section addressed to insurers is about key elements of a sound approach to operational resilience, and here we have identified the key pillars in terms of objectives that an insurance undertaking need to implement to ensure the resilience of their operations. And last objectives are relating or focusing more directly insurance supervisors. And in this section, we have tried to address how insurance supervisor needs to work in a collaborative way at international level to ensure the supervision of a risk which by its nature is cross-border. So as you can see, we have addressed the two objectives or two sections of the paper to insurance undertakings or insurance undertakings, and one section directly to supervisor. But of course, as mentioned earlier, the objectives are broadly dedicated to supervisory authorities in order to create this common understanding and to support and reinforce the practices on supervision of operational resilience at global level. Having said that, I'll turn over now to my colleague Matthew Hampton from the Qatar Financial Services Regulatory Authority, who will give you an overview of the first section of the paper. Thank you very much, Matthew. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. And yes, my name is Matt Hampton, and I work at the Qatar Financial Centre Regulatory Authority in the policy development area. So I'll just be introducing to you the first two objectives, which perhaps not surprisingly focus on governance and risk management. So similar to the issues paper we published in 2023, our objectives start with the overarching concept of governance and emphasise the importance of an entity's operational resilience program being supported by its governance framework, and that's including by the board and senior management. So this is obviously relevant to ICP 7 on corporate governance. And while I would say these are not new concepts, we really want to emphasise the importance of operational resilience rising to the level of the board and the senior management, and the benefits of having the support and buy-in at that top level. So we often hear that the difference between an entity that has advanced its operational resilience program, one that has not, is the support and knowledge of its board and senior management. And just as a personal observation, I previously worked at APRA on governance and accountability issues, so this is sort of close to my heart. As operational matters often cut across business lines and functional areas, it will be critical to ensure senior management, and especially so-called C-suite executives, are clear on their responsibilities, or how I prefer to frame it, on what they are actually accountable for. While it's not always straightforward, a failure to be clear and comprehensive on accountability can lead to weaknesses and gaps in the governance framework around operational resilience. So if we move to the next slide, Ruby. The second objective, again, it shouldn't be surprising to anyone, as we're linking the operational resilience to the entity's operational risk management framework. Here we bring in the importance of operational resilience being embedded in the risk management system and the system of internal controls to encourage a holistic and non-siloed, comprehensive view of risks across the organisation. Finally, we highlight the importance of setting out roles and responsibilities in consideration of the 3 lines of defence, which again links operational resilience to operational risk management and sound and well-accepted risk management practices. I'd again sort of highlight here both the importance and possible challenges of ensuring roles and responsibilities are clear and comprehensive across the 3 lines of defence for operational resilience. On that, I'll now pass over to Max, who will begin the introduction of section 2.2 of the draft objectives.
Thank you, Matthew. Hello, everyone. My name is Max Tarnowski, and I'm technical specialist on operational resilience, cyber innovation in FCA's international division. Been with the FCA for the last 11 years, first 7 of which I've been involved in supervision of large banks and insurance undertakings, and the last 4 years I work in international division focusing on international policy development. Let me continue our overview of operational resilience objectives with the section 2.2 that focuses on key elements of a sound approach to operational resilience. The objectives in this section define specific elements of approach that insurers need to consider to establish a sound operational resilience frameworks. We are focusing here on technology and cyber risk management and the implications to people, processes, and systems. We also consider changes to business processes, change management, scenario testing, business continuity, and disaster recovery plannings, and the use of third-party and non-party service providers. The first objectives focus on the identification of critical services and holistic identification of key elements of those services, including interdependencies, and further assessment of potential impact associated with failure of those critical services. Objective 2.2.1 requires an insurer to identify and maintain an up-to-date inventory of its critical services and interdependencies. Here we are emphasizing the importance of understanding and identifying and documenting all critical services used by an entity from beginning to an end, including key resources, interdependencies, people, processes, systems, and risks involved in the delivery of each of the critical processes. Objective 2.2.2 requires an insurer to set impact tolerances for disruption of each critical services. Here we underscore the importance of having a good understanding of the maximum disruption levels the insurer can tolerate in view of its ability to continue to deliver its critical services and entity risk tolerance. This provides a useful basis of measurement and basis for evaluating the need for change in case of risks. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next two objectives, objective 2.2.3 requires an insurer to implement a self-assessment process to test its ability to withstand and recover from severe operational disruptions and ensures that actions are taken to improve operational resilience on the basis of lessons learned from such self-assessments. Here we bring in a severe but plausible scenario testing concept as a useful element of assessing the ability of an entity to withstand severe operational disruptions. We are emphasizing the importance of evaluating and learning the implications to operational resilience from tests and self-assessments in advance before severe operational disruptions occur to ensure the entity has people, processes, and necessary resources in place to effectively manage the risks if and when they materialize. The next objectives, 2.2.4, focuses on the insurer's ability to effectively manage operational incidents, including but not limited to cyber incidents affecting critical processes, critical services. Effective incident management is something that we've been looking at for the last few years, not only IIS, but also other global standard setting bodies, like, for example, Financial Stability Board that is working on development of a format for incident reporting exchange. And I'm also a member of this group, and I can assure you that we are coordinating between standard setting bodies to ensure that we have a holistic and consistent approach to such critical elements as incident management. For this objective, we broadly refer to operational incidents that also include cyber incidents as those that can have severe impacts on the delivery of critical processes. We emphasize the importance of having in place clear processes and communication plans to prevent, identify, and timely respond to such incidents. This is important not only within the insurer, but also extends to include to the incidents originating in third-party service providers and further down in the supply chain, the incidents that affect critical services within the insurers. Thank you very much, and I will now hand it over to George, who will introduce the next set of objectives in section 2.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world at the moment. My name is George Alayon, Deputy Director for FinTech Supervision and Head of Insurance Innovation here at the Bermuda Monetary Authority. I'm a member of the ORWG drafting team, and I'm happy to share to be here with you today. So turning to objective 2.2.5, it says the insurer manages and mitigates the impact of technology risk to critical services by implementing an effective approach to operational resilience that addresses the phases of protection, detection, response, and recovery. So this sounds familiar, obviously, to those who are familiar with the NIST framework. And basically what we have done is that we have, transmuted this into the to a broader scope into operational resilience itself to the insurers. So our previous objectives, as outlined by Max earlier, addresses the critical services from the perspective of the identification and broadly, setting the impact tolerances for maximum disruption that the insurer can take. So here in this objective, we bring in the importance of understanding the implications of technology risk and disruptions to critical services. So as we all know, all sectors right now use technology as a big part of their strategy. And so comes with it both opportunity and risk. And this can impact almost every aspect of their operation. So this objective addresses the importance of managing this risk from end to end. So I think Max already mentioned it earlier, but we would like to highlight that the nature of the end-to-end scope of this objective, because as a lot of the cyber experts here, for example, know that this objective from an IT and cyber perspective is usually limited only to the IT asset side. But here we emphasize the very broad and the comprehensive scope of this objective. So to really reaching all of the operations of the insurer. So it starts from safeguarding your systems, the processes, and having in place established processes as well to constantly and dynamically detect, respond, and then recover from identified threats. So this is not only IT or cyber threats, but all imaginable threats to the insurer's operations. Next slide. So moving now to, the next objective, 2.2.6, the insurer plans, tests, and implements changes in a controlled manner. So this objective brings in the link between operational resilience and the insurer's change management framework. So normally this is in place for a lot of the IT systems in an insurer. So again, linking back to the whole comprehensive scope of this objective to operations, it encourages insurers to consider the implication of any changes to the operations into its effectiveness and the risks that they may bring. So an example of this can be where an insurer wishes to implement a new claims management system, for example, say using Gen AI. And so what this objective aims to achieve is that the insurer should have a plan in place to identify, what would be the potential risks to operational resilience, while undergoing the change management cycle. So, taking into consideration downtime during system migration, staff adaptation, staff retraining or upscaling, data integrity concerns, and, really presumably all of the disruptions that might come out of this, out of this change management cycle. So here we emphasize the importance of having a contingency plan to prepare for each identified risk to ensure that the company can continue functioning despite the implementation of the new system. So This objective also expects insurers to have a robust communication strategy that will engage and mobilize all stakeholders in a thoughtful manner. In other words, the goal is really to have a plan that can be implemented and reviewed regularly by the insurer. So the next objective is it says the insurer develops, implements, tests, and updates its BCP and DRP, so to ensure that it can respond, recover, resume, and restore to a predefined level of operation following a disruption in a timely manner. So here we bring in business continuity and disaster recovery planning, both of which have quite evolved over the past 4 years. So past COVID, the pandemic experience, it is well accepted now that business continuity plan is not an activity anymore that is conducted in silo, just really sitting with the IT people, but now with a comprehensive reach to the rest of the organization. Also, the pandemic sort of elevated or accelerated the evolution of BCP and DRPs. So the previous BCP and DRPs before have now become the new business as usual or BAU. So the next level BCP and DRPs should also evolve to be able to quickly adapt to new threats over time. So here we also emphasize the importance of clearly establishing and documenting the our DRPs and linking this to business impact analysis and validating it against a range of severe but plausible scenarios. So here there's also an emphasis on dynamic approach on stress testing and scenario testing analysis to make it a constant part of the whole risk management framework and constantly adapting that to whatever lessons learned that the insurer gets from that exercise. Next slide. So this is the final objective, which says the insurer effectively manages relationships with third-party service providers, including intragroup and end-party relationships. So our final objective in this section covers operational risks associated with the use of third-party service providers and the importance of managing these risks alongside and in tandem with the operational risks with critical services internal to the business. Like the use of technology, the use of third-party service providers to perform critical services is becoming more prevalent today. So all big players use that are usually native on the cloud already at this point, and so with it comes increased risk and opportunities to operational resilience. So they can always get back and recover on a short period of time, but also a lot of the risks come with that. So here we emphasize the importance of understanding and managing the potential impacts of failures by third-party service providers to the insurer's life cycle. An example of this can also include considerations on vendor risk management or assessment, as well as due diligence. So service level agreement review and enhancements to incorporate contractual provisions, for example, on resilience clauses can be a good way to achieve this objective, as well as the usual ongoing monitoring and audits, even imposing regulatory compliance, oversight, or extended reach by regulators. So here in Bermuda, we actually have been encouraging or even imposing to a number of our big players to put these provisions in their contracts in regards especially to cybersecurity and data privacy matters. So this can be some of the ways to achieve this objective. And then finally, having a contingency plan in place, when it comes to these third-party service providers, what would be the exit strategy and as well as replacement strategy for third-party service providers in case they fail, and what would be really the backup plan for these companies to get back on track whenever there will be disruptions like this. So that said, I will now turn it back to Andrea, who will introduce the objectives for supervisors.
Thank you very much, George, Matthew, and Max for your comprehensive presentation and for having guided us through the objective for the insurance for the insurance and insurance undertakings. Let me remind to everyone who is in the audience that, as mentioned at the beginning, the objective for financial entities, the objective for insurance undertakings are not to be considered as requirements, but have to be considered as, let's say, in the spirit of an application paper, as explanation of how insurance core principle needs to be interpreted and understood in the context of operational resilience. This is very, and of course, although they are addressed to undertakings, they are ultimately addressed to supervisors, because our objective is to is to ensure, let's say, a minimum level of convergence, or of a minimum level of understanding, and to support supervisors in their task globally. For this reason, and let's say to be more prominent in achieving our objective, we have also defined objective for insurance supervisors, which are specifically focused on how a supervisor authority should, let's say, manage its own internal operation and its own relationship with other supervisor authorities and stakeholders in the context of the supervision of the operational resilience risk. We have defined 4 different objectives. The first 3 are relating, if you wish, on communication, and the 4th is relating to the continuous learning and improvement. As also my colleagues have explained, the nature of the risks underpinning the operational resilience is diverse, and they are borderless, meaning that, for example, in the context of third parties, there might be third-party providers or incident affecting third-party companies that have a global impact. If you perhaps remember, on the 19th of July, for example, there has been an outage of security providers, IT security providers, to Microsoft, CrowdStrike, which generated global disruption cross-sectoral. Those events are exactly the type of events that those objectives, if you wish, for the insurance sector tries to minimize. And this is valid in the context of communication within the supervisory authority. For this reason, the first objective is to ensure that information flows across departments in a specific competent authority. This is valid because, of course, competent authorities and supervisory authorities might be large organizations as well, and the best way to ensure that there is a limited impact, if you wish, of supervision, and a maximum use of the information gathered from financial entity is to share information within the specific competent authority. Second objective here is across the border and within the global supervisory community, recognizing that this risk is a global risk and represent a global threat is paramount. And for this reason, in our objective, we encourage sharing information across supervisors in order to minimize legal impediments, in order to continue, let's say, learning and keep the supervisory community at edge of the technological innovation. Innovation is key in our society nowadays, and it is key also for supervisors in the context of supervising insurance undertakings. Third objective, next slide, please, is next slide, please. Okay, thanks. Sorry. It's in relation to the communication with stakeholders. We understand that there is the need collectively, public-private partnership, if you wish, to continue learning and anticipate the threats that the cyber risk and IT risk, and more broadly the risks underpinning operational resilience, are posing to the sectors. And it is important for this reason that the engagement with relevant stakeholders, is done fairly and broadly, including by being transparent with the sector on the expectations and on the expectation operational resilience, something similar to what we are trying to do with this paper and with the toolkit, and on organizing, if you wish, reporting frameworks and discussions around issues and threats. Last objective that we have developed in our paper focuses on the continuous improvement of the supervisors. As I mentioned, this area is an area in continuously in evolution. I would say every area of our work and of our life is evolving at a speed and at a pace that is unprecedented, and it is important to continuously keep evolving. For this reason, it's important for competent authorities to invest in staff training, so to keep the current workforce up to speed and to recruit new experts in order to be able to supervise this risk. Next slide, please. So with this overview, so the overview that Matthew, Max, and George have presented on our work, focusing on the sections related to insurance and reinsurance undertaking. The overview I tried to present to you in relation to the supervisory to the objective for the supervisory authorities. We have presented you our first paper on digital operational resilience objectives, and which is currently under consultation up to the 11th of October. Your feedback and your your participation to this consultation is key for us in order to be able to understand whether we are going in the right direction. As mentioned, we have tried to take into account a number of standards, number of practices, number of regulations and guidance applicable in all member states of our very diverse and large working group. And the feedback of stakeholders is crucial to understand if we are going in the right direction. These objectives will let's say be in parallel. We are working, as mentioned, on a toolkit, which is cascading and an operationalization of those objectives. For example, there were explanations about the development of business continuity and disaster recovery plan, and for sure we will include in our toolkit how let's say supervisors should assess and should supervise this requirement or this objective for insurance and insurance undertaking. So this toolkit will be developed in the second half of 24, and we have in the beginning of 25, with the objective to kick off a consultation in Q2 2025. The key source of information for the development of this toolkit will be a questionnaire that we will distribute to all of our IIS members. So as said, once we finalize the toolkit, we will merge the objective and the toolkit, and we will develop a final application paper that will be the final outcome of this journey. Of course, as mentioned, we will consult on the toolkit. So with that, I hand over back to Ruby, who will help us in moderating your questions. We are here for you, happy to take any questions on the subject we have presented. Thank you very much. Ruby, back to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and to the rest of our panelists. I hope that gave all of our attendees a really good overview of the draft objectives that we've developed over the past year. And thank you to members of the Operational Resilience Working Group, some of whom I see are on the attendees who are attending this session. As Andrea said, this will be a first opportunity to pose questions on this work, but you will have also the ability to provide views via through the consultation tool, and we're asking for comments by the 11th of October. I do see that there are some questions that are coming through the chat. You are also able to raise your hands and ask questions, and I'll try to make sure I take questions in the order that the hands are raised. But how about we start with the question in the chat, and this is from Tommy Gonzalez. Tommy, would you like to read your question, or do you prefer that I do that? Okay, so maybe I'll give that a start. In the current public consultation, the term objective is used frequently. In the context of this consultation document, is it meant to be understood as goal, or is it meant in line with the meaning of purpose? Regarding the toolkit that is planned for future public consultation, is it intended to consider new survey items in GME for measuring the level of operational resilience achieved by individual companies? Would you like me to get started in responding? And then Andrea, George, Max, Matt can jump in if you'd like. Is that okay? All right. In terms of objectives, to give you a bit of background, there was a lot of discussion within our group on sort of how to term these, and we landed on objectives because what we see these as are really sort of goalposts, outcomes-based principles that we are seeking to achieve. So when I think about this, I think goals is a really good term for this. But really what the key, I guess, underpinning term is that these are areas that we're looking to work towards to achieve. In terms of considering GME data, the main source of information for our toolkit will be I would say qualitative in a way. So what we're doing is we're developing a survey of our members where we're asking about their observed practices based on their supervisory regimes. And so what we'll do is we'll be collecting that information, reviewing that information, summarizing this in a way as a range of practice type of document. And in doing so, we see this as sort of providing a flexible, sort of dynamic range of practice sort of tool that you'd be able to use to think about how to achieve the objectives. We have a second, is there anything else anyone would like to add from the panel? Yeah. So we have a second question also in the chat, and I also see that we have a raised hand. I'll start with the second question in the chat, as I think this came in first. So for what purpose is the consultation taking this unique two-phase approach? I'd appreciate more color on your intent. I can again start here. That's okay. We decided to take a two-phase approach because we wanted to make sure that we use the time that we have to sort of drive momentum in this space, as well as to engage with stakeholders as much as we can. So in thinking about what we wanted to do, in developing objectives in a toolkit, we understood that this could, in total, this project is allocated about 1.5 years. But by doing it in a two-phased approach, we're able to put information out to the public in about 6 months and engage with stakeholders in the way that we're doing now, as well as bilaterally. That information that we gain through the engagement, we feel can help us as we move forward with both finalizing the objectives as well as with facilitating the objectives with the toolkit. So that's why we bifurcated the two pieces. I hope that answers your questions. I do see a raised hand. Robert?
Good day. Can you hear me? This is Robert Neal with the American Property Casualty Insurance Association.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the stakeholder session today. Very informative. I would just like to add that the JIFIA Cyber Risk Working Group is developing comments on the draft application paper, and we appreciate the recent efforts to increase transparency within the IIS, and we welcome the opportunity to engage with the working group members as you work to finalize the paper and to develop the toolkit that will operationalize the objectives, developing examples of relevant supervisory practices that respect jurisdictional differences and proportionality. And would ask, have you begun thinking through including stakeholder opportunities and various workshops as you develop the toolkit? We note this has been done recently with respect to various governance, market conduct initiatives, and we found it to be really useful to have a dialogue as things are developed. So would just suggest this and welcome the opportunity if it comes along, and do appreciate the time today. Thanks again.
Thank you, Robert. And yes, I can say that we are consistently looking for opportunities to engage with our stakeholders. And I know that we worked closely together as we developed the operational resilience issues paper over the last few years, the precursor to these objectives. And in doing so, there we also engaged quite extensively with stakeholders as we work through that development. And I can say our group currently also is having discussions on how we can ensure that we do engage with stakeholders on both the objectives and the toolkit as we develop this. We very much do welcome that. Thank you. Just checking if there's any other raised hands. I'm not seeing any other raised hands or questions in the chat, but maybe as we, oh, one just popped up. No, so I don't see that there anymore. And so maybe as I give people a chance to think, maybe I can pose a question to our panelists. So I know all of you have been so actively engaged with myself and the ORWG in developing these objectives and thinking about how they interact with your regimes and your home organizations, as well as developing different types of supervisory materials in your authority or jurisdiction. So maybe if I can ask you to touch on how you see these objectives working with or are impacting on your regimes in terms of operational resilience and operational risk management. Andre, I know you've done a lot on DORA within IOPA, so maybe I can start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you very much for these questions, and thank you also for the attendees who have asked theirs from my side. So, of course, let's say in the European Union we have chosen, or we are focusing on digital operational resilience, which is a subset, if you wish, of operational resilience, maybe the most prominent category of operational resilience, but is not the only area. So that's maybe an important point. And we have, of course, in the European Union developed a cross-sectoral comprehensive framework with a number of very detailed requirements for our supervised entities. So in the context of the framework of the EU, I think that the objectives work very well, frankly, because they are considering, at least in my view, the key steps or the key foundational steps that a financial entity or that an insurance undertaking needs to follow to be in control of their operation and of the risks affecting their operation, namely IT risks, namely disruption risk, or more generally cyber risk or operational resilience risks. So I think that the consequence and the logic applied in our objective is aligned to the structure of DORA, and actually, let's say, it's also useful to give a kind of more helicopter view, if you wish, to the supervisor. So you could also see it as a kind of high level, very high level, let's say, summary of the key points included in DORA. So I see, because of course DORA was also developed on the basis of international standards. So I see it very positively from that perspective. Thank you again for the question. I hand over to whom? To Max, to Matthew, to George, who wants to take it?
I can answer next. Like the European Union, in the UK, we have developed operational resilience policy, which is very much in line with what IIS is doing in terms of how to define an overarching framework related to operational resilience. And I think that's important to have consistency in terms of how we see what really needs to be done to to have those frameworks implemented. And operational resilience, from my perspective, like many other sort of components of it, it's an international issue. It's very difficult to manage this within the borders of one jurisdiction or one firm, because for example, if you look at the implications of the way how firms and insurers use third-party service providers, that becomes a cross-border, cross-sectoral issue. And I think, you know, we all need to look at the framework from the consistency perspective. So I guess, you know, from my perspective, the UK and the AIS are quite well aligned in terms of what you're trying to do, trying to achieve. And I think this is the most important thing here. I also, I think, see as a very important element of the objectives, the part which is relevant to the sound elements of the operational resilience objectives related to, you know, things like business continuity, disaster recovery management, like change management, incident management, which I think is something which we will all benefit here as well. So that's my view. Who would like to answer next, George or Matt?
Next. So, go ahead. You can go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so I think so at the QFCRA here in Qatar, we have issued for consultation a framework, a regulatory framework broadly in alignment with the objectives. But look, I think it's fair to say, I suppose my personal view is that while operational risk is a well understood concept, I think there's probably still a fair amount of uncertainty around or lack of awareness around what operational resilience is as an outcome. So I think the role of the objectives will be really helpful in one, raising the priority of operational resilience and what is often a very crowded policy agenda. So that's within the regulators. And secondly, to start raising awareness more broadly in the insurance sector here about what operational resilience is about. So I think the objectives, you know, it's not a set and forget type regime. It's something of a cliche, but a bit of a journey that will be ongoing. But I think it's really helpful to have something to point to from the international standard setting bodies to provide that sort of broad holistic framework that we can point to. So from and I'm wearing my policy hat here, it's a great start, I think, to raising awareness and heightening the priority around operational resilience. George, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Matt. So here in Bermuda, as some of you may not know, a lot of the risks that come to Bermuda are global in nature. So we don't have a lot of domestic risks coming here. So our profile is pretty much very diversified. So here the approach that IAS is taking, i.e., you know, looking at outcomes based and through these objectives setting rather than a prescriptive guidance to supervisors is very important for us. It's a very welcome development, obviously, to make sure that we continue to be able to align with international standards, but also still have that enough wiggle room to be able to come up with a pragmatic and fit for purpose approach to compliance. So while our objectives are the same, the road to get there in terms of compliance may differ in a lot of jurisdictions. So this approach, respecting that differences, is very important to us in Bermuda. So specifically right now we do have all of our insurers are governed by a general code of conduct in terms of governance and risk management. And then on the side, we do have the cyber code of conduct, which addresses very specific to IT and cyber risk. So with this, sort of consolidation or integration of these two, looking at operational resilience overall, we see this to be really progressing well to us and be able to give us enough ammo as well to pursue our own local efforts in enhancing our regulatory framework. So we see that progressing very well and be able to help us. Since this is going on at the international level, then now we do have a good space for us to do our own this is actually required to be able to be compliant globally. And then finally, I also see this to be sort of strengthening the coordination that is already happening at the AAS level. So the final objectives there that were described by Andrea, for example, would really help the BMA specifically to, in line with the global nature of our risk, allow us enough prescription and also guidance to be able to work actively and in a more streamlined manner with other regulators to deal with systemic risk, for example. And when we're talking about party relationships, those that are too big to fail for cloud service providers, for example, it will give us enough leverage to coordinate with the supervisors themselves that are involved, as well as the industry themselves that are operating that way globally.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everyone. It's really interesting to hear the perspectives from all these different diverse geographies, as well as jurisdictions that are at different points in the operational resilience journey. I'm not seeing any more questions or raised hands. Just pause for a minute in case someone would like to raise their hand. Okay. So with that, I will bring the session to a close. The slides are available on our website, so you can download those. And I'll remind that this consultation closes on October 11th, and you're able to access the consultation tool also on our website. My email address is in the chat right at the start. So if anyone has any further questions or would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. And as we said earlier, we're very interested in stakeholder engagement and hearing your thoughts on this. So very much looking forward to seeing your responses to the consultation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.